Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Senior Bowl going on in Mobile all this week, and so the entire NFL has descended upon there. And a lot of conversations and discussions and coaching searches and all that stuff happening. So let's head over to Mobile. Jeff Nowak, who is a part of the team over there at WWL. He's the sideline reporter for the Saints. Good enough to spend a couple of minutes with us there. How are you, dude?
I'm doing good. One of the reasons I look forward to the Senior Bowl every year is because I go out to Mobile and I can finally get Cookout and Zaxby's. And then I feel like my fast food life is complete. And then I come back to New Orleans and I was able to get my Zaxby's for lunch today, so I feel like my trip has been completed, so it's going well.
I don't know, Jeff. I mean, that seems like Kane slander, and it's not going to stand here. You got to know the audience a little bit, man. I mean, take that Zaxby's and shove it down your throat. But give me some Canes over Zaxby's.
There's room in my life for more than one set of chicken tenders.
I can respect that. I can respect that. Hey, I'm sure you've seen it by now, but I just saw Luke Johnson's report that the Saints are planning to extend Derek Carr. You got any immediate reaction to that?
Well, so I don't know if it's an extension so much as it's a restructure, and I think that was, you kind of look at it, and I think that was always kind of the play in terms of you have to get under the salary cap. The Saints always have this kind of challenge in the offseason, and you had two options, right? You had the obvious $20 million that you can clear by restructuring Derek's contract, or you have a lot of other difficult decisions up and down the roster to give yourself a little bit of flexibility there to maybe get out from under it. So if you're the Saints and you think, hey, we're going to ride this out, then yeah, I mean, that's the sensible thing to do because it allows you to be more flexible with some of these other guys. If you don't restructure Derek, then you have to take a look at Markshon's contract. You have to take a look at Alvin's contract. You have to take a look at all these other aging guys who, this would just make things more difficult from a flexibility perspective with them. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, again, because I think the team has made it pretty clear that they're sticking with Derek Carr. So, it's like you can disagree with it, but from that perspective, it makes sense in terms of what you'd be doing. So, yeah, I mean, it's just the process. He was always going to be the quarterback this year. And, it doesn't necessarily mean you are stuck with him per se. It would just make it more difficult to move on from him if things went off the rails this year. So this upcoming year. So that's kind of where I land on it, yeah.
Drew Brees was there in Mobile, and I know he met with reporters, and he was asked about the OC search and how it's sort of interwoven with Derek Carr. What did you think about what Drew had to say today?
I don't think Drew was in Mobile. I think he was
Where was that?
That was at Small's Sliders. He's opening up another burger place.
Hey, there you go. Get you some Smalls, Jeff.
I'm always down for some little hamburgers. But yeah. So I wasn't there for that. He was also on WWL yesterday, and he talked about it. And yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with Drew in that I think the Saints have things they need to fix. But I also think this is the idea that they're not going to be able to hire a qualified offensive coordinator because they're taking their time in the process is kind of silly. We'll see. I am intrigued. I think they're getting close. We've heard some new names kind of crop up lately that are interesting. Yeah, I think my read this whole time is when you're trying to pair Dennis Allen with a new play caller, I want that guy to have play calling experience. I would prefer to have a guy who has had offensive coordinator experience because you have a really narrow window. This is something you're trying to thread something here that I don't know if I feel good about throwing a first-time offensive coordinator into that situation and expecting that person to thrive. I need someone who is a little more battle-tested. That's kind of where I lean. But yeah, I mean, I think Drew's right. I think, when you look at the criticism and you look at the noise, a lot of it is about the expectations in this city for football in the city are a lot higher than when the last time they had to, hire an offensive coordinator, which was way back in the mid-2000s. One of the things that's interesting about Drew Brees and his kind of input on the offensive coordinator search is he never had to go through one of these.
Yeah.
He doesn't even necessarily know how this process plays out because they never really had to do that when he was here. So it is interesting because it's really new ground. And I guess you could look back and say it's similar to when the Saints were hiring a defensive coordinator with Sean, and that process was more protracted. And they made some mistakes then, so maybe they learned from that. But yeah, I think a lot of this is about, you got to find a way to win. You got to do it fast, because whoever you bring in, it doesn't matter who you bring in, there's not going to be any patience for a slow start, and that's why when I say I want someone who's battle tested, because that's a tough scenario to walk into, particularly for a guy who's coming out of the quarterback's coach gig that hasn't really experienced it before. So that's, I think it's interesting.
He's on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. If you want to give him a follow there, Saints sideline reporter. Do you, by the way, do you have a choice, like a preference for OC? If you had the pick, who would it be?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people would slam Luke Getsy if it ended up being Luke Getsy. But I actually think I don't think he did as bad a job with the Bears as a lot of people might. And part of that, because I just don't think that he was ever, like, his scheme, his ideas for the offense really married well with Justin Fields. And I think that became clear pretty quickly. When they first started to work together, like Justin Fields, they tried to make him into a pocket passer and not really have running be a part of his game. And that's not because Luke wanted to change him. That's just how he wants to run an offense. So I think Luke Getsy would be an intriguing hire. Clint Kubiak's another guy. He kind of checks that box of having been a play caller before he did it in Minnesota. You want to get that kind of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay tree in there. So he'd be my second, if I was kind of ranking these. And then I think Ronald Curry, I know people will be annoyed and say, they're just sticking with more of the same. I still think Ronald Curry is a really good coach. And I think the decision with Ronald, you have to kind of ask yourself, do you think he can be an offensive coordinator in the NFL? And if the answer is yes, then you have to ask yourself the next question, which is, would you rather him be your offensive coordinator or somebody else? Because I would be stunned if his name doesn't start surfacing in some of these coordinator searches. He interviewed with the Bucs last year. So he would be, that's kind of my three, where if I'm looking to hire someone, it would be one of those three.
Let me switch gears a bit while you are there in Mobile and ask, who have been the standouts? I mean, just when I ask you, as the week has gone to practice, the first few names maybe that pop into your head, good or bad, what do you blurt out?
Yeah, so my goal in Mobile is I'm just trying to come up with a pool of guys that I think are intriguing for the Saints to draft. That's usually how I approach it. I'm not out there scouting every individual player, because some make sense, some don't. But the guy who really jumped out, and he's going to get a lot of praise, he's going to fly up draft boards real quick, is Darius Robinson. Whatever you want to call him, I think he's kind of a combo inside-outside rusher. He's 6'5", 284 pounds, and you would never guess that by looking at him. And I talked to him after yesterday's practice, and he'll tell you he believes he is the best defensive lineman in this draft. He compares himself. He says he's a mix of Max Crosby and Chris Jones, which is high praise. But go watch some of these clips, and you're like, you know what? I can see it. He's just blowing people off the line. He just fits exactly what the Saints want to do. We talked to Jeff Ireland about prototypes and how you adjust over time. And edge rushers seem to be getting smaller. And do the Saints need to kind of adjust how they scout and what they look for? And while I think that's definitely true at linebacker, and you've seen them get a little smaller and quicker at linebacker, I don't think that their edge rusher prototype is going to change, anytime soon. And he just fits that perfectly. And I think he's been wowing some folks. Just do a quick Twitter search for Darius Robinson, and you'll see what I'm talking about really quickly. Taliesin Fuanga, which that's a name that if you're trying to figure out how to say it, that is how it's said. I asked him. He's just this behemoth of a man. Oregon State, 6'6", 334. I think he weighed in at. He's a mauler. He's a guy who excels in the run game. He's got to improve pass pro, and I know that's gonna give some people some nightmares when they hear that. But you're just looking for prototypes, and I think he is an excellent prospect who could be there at 14. And my question with him is how he handles speed. How he handles speed rushers, because you're 6'6", you got to be able to move. You got to be able to get your hands on guys, and when he does, he's effective. When they get around him a little bit, that's where your technique comes in. But I think he's a pretty technically sound guy. So I feel really good about him. Another guy, Jordan Morgan, offensive tackle Arizona, was really good. Tyler Guyton's another just gigantic human offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. I think, did I say Oklahoma with Jordan Morgan? I meant Arizona if I said Oklahoma. And then the other, one of the standouts that I didn't expect was Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. You wonder how a guy out of Toledo is going to match up when he kind of goes up against these top-end prospects, and he's just been locking people down. There's been some people saying he's the best defensive player at the Senior Bowl this week. So, those are just a few names. Then you have, obviously, Ladd McConkey's out there. He's just a professional wide receiver playing in college. Roman Wilson really kind of reminds me of Olave, but these are guys, Michigan, Georgia, they're not surprising anybody. So,
right.
Those are just a few names.
Last thing, any observations from the LSU guys, Jordan Jefferson, Charles Turner? I mean, I guess aside from Jordan Jefferson ripping a guy's helmet off and throwing it across the field.
Yeah, I did get a good look at Jordan doing that. I wasn't able to catch up with Jordan. He's a lot of these guys. You're just watching to see. It's like, okay, how are they kind of battling? How are they kind of holding up? I think Jordan, avails himself pretty well in that regard. With Charles, he's been working at all three interior line spots, which that's something that these pro scouts want to see. They want to see some versatility. He told me that he's been told, he needs to work on his kind of aggression at the point of attack, keeping his hips square, stuff that, I think the biggest thing for these guys at this event specifically is you get out there, you start talking to scouts, you start talking to teams, everybody meets with all 32 teams. They call it like a speed dating situation. And you just kind of learn how you're perceived and what people think you need to work on. And I think that's so valuable as you get into the rest of this process, right? They're going to have a pro day. They're going to have all this time to kind of work and refine and then get into these drills in front of scouts again and maybe show what they weren't excelling at going into this week. So I think both those guys, they're fringe prospects, right? You're talking about late round or UDFA. So, I think both of them held up pretty well. I didn't see them getting bullied around at all. And I think it's just going to be kind of refining, and I'm interested to see what they do on Saturday.
There's a really good video as well. Charles Turner, I guess the offensive linemen were playing some light DB drills. Charles Turner is like, D'ing up, press coverage on one of the other offensive linemen running a corner route in the end zone. Actually, some pretty good ball
and he hit
skills.
the gritty.
Yeah. Well, the video I saw, I didn't hit the gritty, but I did see him drop the interception. But undercut the route, high pointed the ball, a lot of good skills there, Jeff. I mean, you drop him, 100 LBs. He might be a guy that could have played for LSU this past year.
Maybe he's a tight end. Who knows?
Or could have been a corner for LSU this past year. Wouldn't have made much difference. Jeff Nowak on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. Thanks, man. We appreciate it.
Sure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.